Yo, hi guys, it's Inam4 here with the Xbox 360 and the brand new Xbox Day 1 Edition controller. We're going to take a look at what's different and not so different between both these controllers. If we begin by having a look at the general overall shape of the 360 controller in comparison to the Day 1 Edition, it's generally the same sort of size as the Day 1 Edition controller for the Xbox One. If you put them side by side, you can see it's generally a little bit wider when it comes to the hand grips here than its predecessor. You can see it's generally ever so slightly longer in height. Both controllers feel very good in the hand, not too heavy and not too light, but my biggest gripe about the 360 controller was the battery pack, especially if you got big hands. I found my fingers were just trying to get a good location to be kept out the way because the battery pack always kept on getting in my way of my big spider fingers. However, the Xbox One controller feels just as good, if not better, in the hand, with a slightly bigger bulging hand grips, I'm going to call these things here, and with the modification of no longer having the bulging battery pack here, you still have a place where you can put your batteries in here, of course, but it's in line with the controller and not getting in the way when you're trying to grip the controller with your large spider fingers. Getting both controllers bolt upright against each other here, and you should notice that the Xbox One controller doesn't seem as thick as its predecessor. In fact, with the bigger trigger buttons, you'd think it would be slightly bigger, but it actually looks quite slimming because the battery pack is being merged into the main body of the controller, and if you look against the 360, that looks pretty horrendous against its newer, younger brother. You'll also notice that Microsoft branding has been removed and replaced with the Xbox branding, as well as this connector along the front here to connect to various devices has been replaced with a micro USB connector at the top here, which is used to act as a wired controller when you have it connected to your console. So Microsoft or Xbox will not be selling two controllers, one wired and one wireless. They'll just be selling the one controller, and you will just simply have to connect it with a micro USB lead to your console to act as a wired controller. You may or you may not have noticed, next to the wireless button in amongst the transparent-ish casing, there are infrared blasters which communicate with the Kinect sensor to see where and who has the controller. Heading around the sides now, and you'll notice a 360 controller seems to be thicker than its newer younger brother. The younger brother also seems to have larger and more angled triggers along the top here. I should mention that Microsoft are calling these impulse triggers because these triggers have smaller miniaturized rumble motors inside of them. So there's two sets of rumble motors here. There's one set of rumble motors in the grips, I'm going to call these, of both controllers, but the Xbox One controller has miniaturized smaller rumble motors just behind the triggers along the front of the controller here, which should provide a more immersive gaming experience once the developers start to take advantage of these. For example, if you're playing a first-person shooter and you're firing a gun, you should be able to feel small vibrations in the triggers as you're letting off those rounds. And if you're playing a driving game and say one tire leaves the track, depending upon if the left or right hand side tire leaves the track, you should be able to feel small vibrations in the same corresponding triggers. Looking at both controllers from the top here, and they look very similar with very subtle changes. Whereas the 360 controller had a home button in the center with back and start either side, these buttons have now been replaced with view and menu buttons. That home button has now gone to center and top. Incidentally, the view button, for example, gives you inventory information in first-person shooters, whereas the menu button does what the start button used to do. You'll notice from the Xbox 360 controller that the A, B, X and Y buttons are fully colored in and more spaced apart than on the newer younger brother. You can see on the younger brother they're slightly more close together and slightly larger, as well as not being all of the same color. They seem to be transparent with the letters only being color coded. One of the welcome changes to the newer controller is the D-pad. It's more recessed into the controller body itself than its 360 predecessor, where it was kind of on a pedestal in line with the right hand side joystick. Its more ergonomic plus sign does have a significant click sound to it once those buttons have been pressed. Obviously underneath inside the controller itself it's still going to be one plastic plus sign, but it's significantly improved over its predecessor, where it just looked like a circular button with the plus sign kind of carved out of it. It's definitely better than the 360 controller. And as I said, this controller being part of the Day 1 Edition console, the plus D-pad itself is entirely out of chrome. The joysticks have also been improved, being slightly smaller in diameter than its predecessor, and also having a grip around the sides of the joystick itself, so you don't have to hold the joystick from the top, which is incidentally more recessed than its predecessor here as well. So whichever way you want to use the joysticks, with your thumb from the top or from the sides, overall it gives a better, more accurate experience. And speaking of accuracy, there was a little bit of play in the joysticks of the 360 controller, meaning you could move them around with no representation in game whatsoever. This has totally been addressed on the newer Xbox One controller. As I move the joystick, you can feel resistance and there's no play whatsoever. I don't know what this is going to be like in a couple of months from now. Certainly a month into using it, there's no play whatsoever, and you can feel resistance straight away when you move it, which should provide a better and more accurate gaming experience. Getting towards the bottom underside of both controllers here, you have a headset port on both controllers. However, the 2.5mm audio jack in the center of the 360 controller is no longer present on the Xbox One unit. Notice the shoulder buttons on the 360 controller press down no matter which end of the actual button you press, whether on the outside or the inner side. They get pressed either way. However, on the Xbox One controller, notice if you press on the outer side, it presses and makes a significant click. But if you do the middle side, or the inner side rather, it doesn't press down, because these are hinged buttons and they are hinged at this side. So you need to press either at the other end or towards the middle, which does signify a click when you press there. And that was a controller comparison between the previous generation Xbox 360 and the next generation Xbox One. As ever, any comments or questions you guys have got, hit them up in the comment section down below there. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video and you like what you saw, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. It's also down there as well, doesn't cost you a penny, and you can also check out some of our forthcoming videos. Thanks for watching, have a wicked day, and we'll see you next time.